That's a wonderful thing. I want to take a moment and thank the folks that have put this on. From United for Liberty, we have Kathy Cuddy, Terrence Shanigan, Rick Begich, and David Cuddy, and myself actually put the format of the program together. I'd like to take just a moment and give you a little bit about background about United for Liberty, and then we're going to get started. United for Liberty, approximately about a year and a half ago, came together. Actually, David Cuddy had a conversation with myself, and it was about that we needed to start sitting down and having communication and working together. And so I would like to let you know that United for Liberty is an open forum. We don't, we're very nonpartisan. We don't care what party affiliation that you have. It's very important for Alaskans to sit down and start having conversations together, because we're not going to move this country nor Alaska where we need it unless we sit down and have lucid, intelligent conversations with each other. Basically what we're interested in is less government. We're interested in more personal responsibility, and we're interested in the freedoms that were given to us under the Constitution. So once a month, if you look on the back there, you'll see that we have a website that's www.uflalaska.com. On there's a wonderful recent newsletter, and I think there's about 25 different articles from different organizations. And you will also see all the different organizations involved there. Now, if you are in an organization, an affiliation, a party, and you'd like to be part of United for Liberty, there's contact there, and you can certainly get in touch and be that. Come on in. We usually have meetings about once a month. And so in that regard, we have very exciting, and I put out a format. If you filled out that little card out there, I will email you and ask you if you want to be put on our list, and I'd be more than happy to do that so I can reach out. So the real bottom line is that we the people need to start paying attention to the important things of both the state and the country here, because obviously we're in some serious problems and difficulties and challenges, and we can fix those by conversing in that regard. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our moderator for tonight. He's a very good friend of mine. I've had the opportunity over the last year and a half to really get to know Mr. Dave Cuddy, and I certainly appreciate he's a very wonderful representative of the community here, and he certainly reaches out and gets deeply involved, and he's done an excellent job with the civil discourse. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator, David Cuddy.
Thank you all for coming, and the people who are going to get a chance to see this on your televisions tonight. It's just wonderful that we get this participation. One thing you might find that these two candidates, and I know them both, they're both good men, they've both entered the arena, and they want to do the best they can for our nation. But you're going to find that one or both of them at some point is going to let you down, not support your personal interest or your special interest, whatever it is. My request is that you give them a second chance and a second look to then look at where are they on the nation's business and the nation's interest, because that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about and what you are called upon as voters to select our representative to that big board of directors that runs America, United States Senate. So I would just ask that you don't judge them on whatever your one interest is, but kind of look at it a little broader scope. I do want to thank everybody in the committee who worked on this, and you folks, and wonderful candidates. So if we could have Mark Begich and Dan Sullivan come out. We have a timer in the front, and the most of the questions and statements will be about 90 seconds, and he is going to give one ding at 60 seconds and another one at 80 seconds, and then a couple more. And so I would ask both of the candidates to observe our time limits as best you can. I know that these can run on a long time if we let them, and I know candidates certainly know how to fill the time allotted and then some. We have, we'll start out with the first. You each have your opening statement, and we start with Mark Begich, who will give a 90 seconds and a little bit of background about who he is and what he thinks is important.
Thank you very much, Dave, and thank you to United for Liberty for hosting this, and to my opponent, Dan Sullivan, thank you for participating. And thank you, my wife is here. My mother has driven in from Carson City, Nevada, all the way up here with her sister. Thank you for being here, appreciate it. You know, opportunities like this are very important to bring Alaskans together, to talk about the issues and how we grow our state. Because our state, when we think about the past, it was Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, AIP, Green Party, all working together. Even though we may disagree on issues, we focused on what we need to do to move the state forward. When we think of the issues like developing our resources, protecting our right to privacy, growing our economy, strengthening our military, and ensuring we're taking care of our veterans. I'm proud of my record for fighting for Alaska, not only during my lifetime here in Alaska, but also my last 6 years as U.S. Senator. The NPRA, CD5, GMT1, making sure we're moving forward on oil and gas development, voting against the Patriot Act 3 separate times, reducing the deficit by over 65%, bringing over $2.6 billion back to Alaska, protecting the F-16s in Fairbanks, and bringing the F-35s. Tonight, I look forward to talking and debating the issues that are important to Alaskans, but have an impact not only to Alaska, but to our country. These are the formats I love, because it's Alaskans asking the questions that you care about, not what Washington, D.C. cares about. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Mr. Sullivan?
Thanks, David, and thanks, everybody. I've had the honor of serving my state and my country in a variety of positions, leadership positions. But the most important job I've ever had and still have is that of a husband to an amazing wife. My wife Julie's here, and the father of 3 wonderful Alaska teenage daughters. And 2 of them are here tonight, Isabella and Laurel. I am running for the U.S. Senate because I want to ensure that our kids have a future that's better than the one we've inherited, and that is not happening right now. A common theme I hear whenever I'm out campaigning is our country is fundamentally going in the wrong direction. We have trillions of dollars of debt on our kids' backs, an economy that can't create jobs, and federal overreach that is undermining our opportunities and our liberties. This path is not sustainable. We are running out of time as a country. Unfortunately, my opponent, Mark Begich, has been part of the problem. He has been a loyal foot soldier in Harry Reid's leadership team, and he has voted with Barack Obama 97% of the time. Now, despite Mark's rubber stamping of this harmful Obama administration agenda, I'm starting to see reasons for optimism in the state because of policies that the state is undertaking of less government, more freedom, fighting the federal government's overreach. We are starting to see opportunities in places like Cook Inlet, on the North Slope, Point Thompson and the gas line, and yes, fighting domestic violence and sexual assault with the Choose Respect campaign. We need somebody in Washington who's going to roll back the Obama administration's agenda, be a fighter again for the U.S. Senate, in the U.S. Senate, and get real results for Alaskans and for the country. I'd be honored by your vote in November. Thank you.
There's 2 things I forgot to do. First is to ask everybody to turn your cell phones off so we make sure we don't get any interruptions. And I was remiss as well. So if you do that. And the second that I forgot, that both these candidates are obviously better husbands than I am. I forgot to thank my wife for all of the help she's done in putting this together. Kathy? Okay, we're going to move to the next part of this, which is we've got some pretty meaty questions, and the first one is an Alaskan question, and one that concerns most of us. A lot of us are fish and game, wildlife, outdoors people. The first question, you'll have 90 seconds to respond, and then your opponent will have 30 seconds to rebut, and then we'll reverse to the next candidate. Alaska's experiencing major declines in its fish and game populations. Bycatch rates for species like king salmon are high. A lot of you on the Kenai know that it was closed this year. What do you believe the root cause of the problem is? And as Alaska's U.S. Senator, thinking of what you can do at the national level, be specific, and what are your solutions? How would you help us resolve our fish and game situation so we can have more to go after? First, we have Dan Sullivan.
You know, Dave, one of the greatest privileges I've had as a candidate is being able to meet with Alaskans throughout the state, and I've certainly been doing that with all the different stakeholders with regard to our fisheries, whether it's sports, commercial, subsistence, and the key issue from my perspective is making sure that we are working together, to not have federal policies that are top-down approaches to addressing some of these big policies that you're talking about with regard to fisheries. You know, as a senator, my door will always be open on these critical issues. You know, our fisheries are some of the most abundant and sustainably managed in the world. And we want to keep it that way. We want to keep it that way, as I was talking about, for our kids' sake and our grandkids' sake, because this is such a critical component of Alaska. But what we need to do is make sure we're not limiting opportunities, and the federal government has done that with abuse of the Endangered Species Act, and then making sure that we have a partner in the federal government to ensure that our decisions on fisheries management is grounded in sound science, whether it's dealing with the bycatch issue, whether it's dealing with ocean conditions, whether it's dealing with foreign fleets that are taking too many of our fisheries in our 200-mile zone. So these are the key issues that I think we need to focus on with regard to fisheries. And again, as a U.S. Senator, I will be working with all stakeholders in this important industry to make sure we have the best results for Alaska.
Thank you. Do you have some comments?
I guess my comments would be that, let me be very specific on this, that bycatch has been dwindling over the years, but still a problem. There are several things you can do. For example, I chair the committee that deals with the Fisheries and Coast Guard. We are now looking at electronic monitoring, more observers that need to be funded properly. We need to ensure the new technologies and innovation that is available to go after bycatch, and we just passed 4 treaties to go after these people who I consider pirates who are stealing our fish on the high seas, making sure we have stronger international penalties on these folks because they are damaging our fisheries and impacting our fisheries.
Thank you, and now you get your opening statement on the question.
Let me again state, as chairman of the Fisheries and Coast Guard Committee, my role and responsibility is to ensure the reauthorization of the Magnuson-Stevens Act. This piece of legislation has created the most sustainable fisheries in the country when you think of Alaska. Over 5 billion pounds of seafood, $5+ billion industry, 78,000 jobs, direct and indirect, with our fisheries industry. But we need to make sure it is comprehensive. When it was first originally done, it focused on commercial. We need to make sure, in the reauthorization that I'm working on with Senator Rubio from Florida, who's my partner in this, is making sure that the sports and recreational are part of it, making sure subsistence is part of it, making sure that commercial fishery is not just about today, but it's into the future. With regards to bycatch, again, I held 6 listening sessions around the state, as well as many around the country, to figure out how to do this national policy the right way. As I mentioned, electronic monitoring, new innovation about net sizes are critical to deal with bycatch and overcatch. Making sure the observer program is not just a burden on the state, which has basically been the funder, but making sure the federal government is a partner in making that happen. Also, stronger penalties on the people who are breaking the rules when it comes to bycatch. This is a critical part. As I mentioned also, the 4 new treaties going after the pirates that are out there taking our fish illegally and making sure they're held accountable for it. And again, as I mentioned, this is the first time ever in the Magnuson-Stevens Act, sports and rec and subsistence will be part of the equation because it's an all-encompassing fisheries policy that we need to have.
Thank you. Dan, rebuttal?
Well, I would agree with Senator Begich on this, the importance of reauthorizing the Magnuson-Stevens Act. And with a expansion in terms of respecting the broader interests that we have in Alaska. I mean, the one thing that we can't do with the reauthorization is pitting one user group, whether it's commercial, subsistence, recreation, against another. And we can't also have, even though we're reauthorizing, we cannot have a one-size-fits-all federal approach to fisheries. That's one of the dangers with federal regulation, federal laws with regard to our fisheries. They're very unique. It has to have Alaska-specific elements to it, and that's what I would be focused on as a U.S. Senator.
Thank you. Our next question, we lead off with Senator Begich. U.S. is in financial trouble. Everybody knows it. We have annual trillion-dollar deficits if you include, if you use real accounting, unfunded mandates in the multiple trillions. How is America going to meet its financial responsibilities, and what advice, what plan would you have to solve this big problem?
Thanks, Dave. Let me give kind of a picture of what it was like in 2009 when I came into office. The annual deficit was $1.4 trillion, unsustainable under any circumstance. And 700,000 jobs being lost every single month. Thanks to the Recovery Act and many other aspects we did, the annual deficit has been reduced by 65%. Not good enough yet, let me make that very clear. But we still need to make sure we invest at the same time cutting the budget. Since I've been in the Senate, for example, a MEADS program, a $400 million program that was not needed, that we worked with Republicans and Democrats, cut that program out. Surplus property, we have over $15 billion of property this federal government has, they don't use. All we do is turn the lights on and guard it. It should be sold off and sold. Or the TARP money that was given to banks to solve their problem in the financial crisis, when that all got paid back, I was one of the few Democrats working with Republicans, John Thune and others, to ensure that money went back to pay off and pay down the deficit. Also in my own office, I cut over $1 million out of my budget, did not take a pay raise over the last 6 years since I've been in office, and ensured no other senator would do it. And when my staff was furloughed, when we closed down the government, I also took the furlough and put my money and donated it for the same amount of time. I support a constitutional budget amendment in the Constitution, let me make that very clear. I support a bipartisan tax simplification bill that would reduce the deficit, clean out the loopholes, and get focused on middle-class America and making sure they have a fair tax system.
Thank you. Dan?
Is this a 30-second rebuttal?
This 30-second rebuttal.
Well, Senator, I would happen to disagree with some of the numbers you're talking about. In the last 7 years, the debt of the United States has run up an additional $7 trillion, one of the largest expansions of the debt in the history of the country. We now have a debt of $17 trillion on our kids' backs. And I think this is part of the problem with career politicians. You know, when you ran for office for the U.S. Senate, you left Anchorage a $17 million deficit in debt. So what we need to do is have politicians who are really focused on the difficult issues of debt reduction. Not just talk about it, but actually make the hard decisions to do it. Right now, we are clearly on an unsustainable path, particularly as with regard to our national debt. And this is something that's a moral issue because it's going to be on our kids' backs.
Thank you.
We need to change it.
Thank you. And now you get your 90 seconds.
Well, as I mentioned, Dave, you know, one of the reasons I'm running is because of this issue. This is an unsustainable issue for our entire country. It's an issue that's an intergenerational issue because we are leaving a debt on our kids' backs that's unsustainable. To me, there's 3 ways to focus on doing this. First, you have to have a Senate that is responsible. Senator Begich, your first 4 years in the U.S. Senate, you guys never passed a budget. 4 years. The U.S. Senate never passed a budget, a constitutional responsibility that you didn't undertake. We need to grow this economy. It is critical. We have had the weakest recovery for a country in history of the United States after a major recession because of the policies of the Senate Democrats and the Obama administration. The best way to get rid of our debt is to get back to American levels of growth, 3 and 4% GDP growth. We need to undertake entitlement reform. That's a hard issue. I've been attacked for even talking about it. But we have unsustainable programs when we need politicians who can take the courage to undertake these because they're on a bankrupt trajectory. And finally, we do need to cut spending. There's a whole host of areas where we need to cut. President Obama increased the EPA's budget by 40% in 2009. I believe almost all of that landed here in Alaska. We need to cut that budget. Even DOD, something I'm very focused on, is bloated. But there's a lot. But if we don't grow this economy, we are going to be in trouble. And the policies of the Obama administration, Harry Reid and Mark Begich, have been undermining national growth, and that's what we got to turn around on.
Thank you, Dan. Mark? Rebuttal?
Dan, let me give you some history on this. First off, the debt of this country did not happen overnight. It did not happen suddenly like that. Between 2000 and 2007, the Republicans controlled the Senate, the House, and the presidency. The national debt went up, you gave the numbers, $10 billion by that point. We funded, or didn't fund, 2 wars to the tune of $2 trillion. We also now have veterans that we must take care of for the work and service they did to our country that will be trillions of dollars. This is not a simple problem. And what we have done to cut the annual deficit is different than debt, annual deficit from 1.4 down to 500 million is on the right track. Is it perfect? No. And we're going to continue to make cuts. We're going to grow the economy, which we have done, 9 million jobs pre-recession time. Those are the facts. It is not a perfect situation, but it is better than where it was in 2009. I can tell you that based on the data.
Thank you. Question number 3. We've got, it's difficult for politicians to do the right thing for the future of the United States and our next generation when so many voters want something from government. There's a growing attitude amongst some who feel entitled to government money, with little concern for the bill to our next generation of children to pay. What's your solution? And you two have both talked a little bit about this. It dovetails with your last question, but if you can elaborate on it a little bit, that'd be great. First, we have Dan Sullivan.
Well, again, Dave, one of the things that I'm doing is, and you mentioned about the kids and our future. I'm very focused on running because of that, the future of our children and grandchildren. You know, and you talk about the entitlement mentality, but I also think there's another problem and another mentality, and that problem is career politicians. You know, Mark, I couldn't agree more with you. It was a bipartisan failure to get to $17 trillion of debt. That's Democrats and Republicans. But what is that? That's career politicians. People like Mark Begich, who have been running for office their entire life. Okay? They're not there to make the hard decisions. I've never run for office in my life until last week, my first run for office. I want to go to Washington to make the hard decisions. I'm not here for a career politician who's kicking the can down the road that is making these huge, huge deficits in debt on our kids' backs. You know, you left $17 million of debt or deficit in Anchorage when you ran for office. That's part of the problem. Now, Dave, I disagree a little bit with the premise of the question. I do think that Alaskans are very ready to take a deal. Less government spending, less programs for more economic opportunity, less red tape, more access to our federal lands, for sustainable private sector growth. That's key. The Obama administration, Harry Reid, you're part of that leadership team, Mark, has done the exact opposite. They've limited our access to these lands, they've limited our economic opportunity, and they have shut down and delayed through red tape so much development and economic opportunity for Alaskans. We need to change that. I think Alaskans are ready for that deal.
Thank you, Dan. Mark?
This is my 30. This is my 30, right? My rebuttal. Yeah. First off, Dan, the question was on entitlements, and I know you had a broader sweep there. But the issue, for example, on Social Security. Social Security, and people say it all the time, that it's going to be bankrupt by a certain point. Actually, by 2037, it will not be able to pay out all its premiums as promised. So the retirement, simple changes. I sponsored legislation to do one simple thing. Change who pays into Social Security, making sure that everybody who makes over $113,000, who don't pay into Social Security over those wages, pays into Social Security. So it becomes sustainable over the next 75 years. That's what we need to be doing. You know, when you want to change and you want to talk about entitlements and figure out what to do. On Medicare, for example, we did some changes there that, for example, made sure, people called it a cut. No, we actually made it more efficient and saved almost $750 billion. The Affordable Care Act saved $1.2 trillion to the Medicare program. Those
Thank you.
are changes that make a difference.
Thank you, Mark. And now you have your 90 seconds.
Let me,
Actually, is that my,
No? Have you both talked on it?
no, I haven't done my 90.
Okay.
sorry. This is a little confusing.
It's 90-30. Is my clock starting now? I don't want to, go
You can
ahead.
give him his
Okay, let me
seconds
go
back.
ahead.
You're running.
Let me say this. First, as I said on entitlements, we have some reform to do, but let's make sure who these entitlements protect. You know, Social Security in this state, 1 out of 10 people receive Social Security. Not only seniors, but disabled and others. We need to make sure it is taken care of for years to come because people paid into it. It's a retirement program. It's not something that they just are given. You pay, you work, you pay into it, you should receive a benefit back. That's why I propose legislation to reform it, to make it better, to enhance the benefits, and ensure it's sustainable for the years into the future. Dan, you constantly, and I know you'll say this, it sounds like you're riffed for the night, career politician, left the city in debt. Let me tell you something about the city of Anchorage. I know you may be aware of it a little bit, but I love this city. I love what we were able to do, 93 new police officers. We came in at a $33 million deficit. We turned it around. We built more roads than the last 3 mayors combined. We built the city to sustain what the economic crash occurred. There are a lot of issues that we've challenged and made sure this city was a better city 5 years after I was mayor. There's no question about it.
Dan, rebuttal?
Actually, Mark, the question was about the entitlement mentality and what's happening in this country. And what I think we need to do is we need to get back to a country that focuses on the private sector and private sector growth through less government and more freedom. The entire Obama administration's agenda, the entire Harry Reid agenda that you've been part of has been about more government. It's been about increasing power in Washington. It's been about limiting opportunities, and it is about job-crushing regulations. What we need to do is change that, because we are on a trajectory right now that, in my view, for the country is very, very unsustainable. We can do this. We can turn it around, but with the continuation of those kind of policies, we're going to be in deep trouble.
Thank you. Our next question is next question is on immigration, very much in front of us today. Immigration, there's so many facets to this critical issue. National Association of former Border Patrol officers estimate 20 to 30 million illegal aliens. The U.S. is spending hundreds of billions for care, processing illegal aliens flooding into the country. Labor is becoming concerned about the cost to American jobs. What is your vision? How would you each visualize that the American immigration, what should it look like, and how would you get there? First, Mark.
First, let me make it very clear, because I know people ask me this all the time. I oppose amnesty, and I think the president has to be very careful with his stand in moving forward without congressional authority with regards to immigration issues. Now, we passed a bipartisan immigration bill. Bipartisan. Democrats and Republicans finding a common ground. What does the bill do? No question the immigration system is broken. But what does this bill do? It ensures protection in the southern border by adding 40,000 new officers to take care of the border in the southern part. Gives businesses the tools they need to increase the penalties to ensure that businesses who knowingly hire undocumented workers are dealt with efficiently. Strengthening deportation laws for those that commit crimes that need to leave this country. It ensures that people go to the back of the line, pay their taxes, pay their fines, to make sure that we also ensure that we educate folks here for those areas that we're importing people for, engineers, tech people, to add money to make sure we have the workforce here so we don't have to have folks from other countries coming and doing these jobs. It also is a bill that cuts the deficit by $135 billion over 10 years. That is what I think is a bipartisan bill. It passed the Senate. It's stuck over in the House, waiting for action over there. This is the kind of legislation that my opponent says never happens. Well, no, Democrats, Republicans, Heller, Ayotte, Hatch, Rubio, Republicans working with Democrats, found common ground, as we all do on these issues. You have to find common ground to get a solution, protect the borders, make sure there's a process that people have to pay their fines, pay their taxes, and deal with it. Even the National Chamber of Commerce supports this. This is the right approach over the long term to solve this problem, that immigration system, which is broken.
Thank you. Dan, rebuttal.
Well, I think that it's stuck in the House because there's reluctance with regard to comprehensive immigration reform. Part of the problem in Congress right now is the last time we had comprehensive reform, it was comprehensive health care reform. And it ended up being that nobody seemed to have read the bill. Nobody knew what was in the bill. That wasn't health care reform, that was legislative malpractice. And what we have... And so you have the American people who are very, very skeptical of comprehensive reform and comprehensive immigration reform. Senator, I'm wondering if you read that bill, because I'm sure there's a lot of things in there that could surprise people who voted for it when they don't actually read it. So I have actually been opposed to comprehensive immigration reform because the credibility of Congress on something like this is so low.
Thank you, Dan. And now your 90 seconds. 90 seconds.
So I do think we obviously have a big problem on the border, and we are a nation of immigrants, but we're also a nation of laws. And what's happening on the border, it is heartbreaking. Let's admit it, watching these kids come up here. But I think the best thing that can happen with those kids is to reunite them with their families in their countries. But the one thing we need to do with regard to immigration is we need to secure our borders. Everybody talks about this. The Congress talks about it, but it doesn't happen. Why is this so hard? Every other country secures their borders. Why can't we be securing our borders? There are elements that the Congress has talked about to protect not only the borders, but the workplace. I do believe in the E-Verify system that would help ensure that employers are not hiring undocumented workers. We need to be able to do that. But the other thing we need to do is you have an administration that has been allowing for amnesty, that has been signaling that they're not going to enforce the laws, that is shredding the rule of law, one of the most important, precious ideals of America, and we're creating this crisis. Right now, the president, they're floating this trial balloon, it was in your question, Dave, about possibly amnesty through an executive order. That would be the biggest usurpation of constitutional power from the legislative branch to the from the legislative branch to the executive branch. The lawlessness that we see with this administration has to be stopped, and the Senate, whether it's Democrats or Republicans, should be standing up for their prerogatives. So I think immigration reform should not be comprehensive, it should be piecemeal, and we certainly shouldn't have an administration that continues its lawless approach to amnesty.
Thank you.
You know, first off, last year alone, almost 400,000 people were deported from this country who came here undocumented. Second, the amount of people coming through the borders today have come down from about 1,600 to 450 or so a week and moving downward. But the question is, Dan, you can keep piecemealing these things together, but we do need comprehensive reform. If you just do one piece, it's like a balloon. You push it from another side. You have to deal with the businesses that are hiring illegals, undocumented workers illegally. You need to deal with the people we're trying to bring into this country because we don't have enough engineers and high-tech people. We need to deal with the border. You need to do this in a comprehensive way. And what I just laid out was a comprehensive effort by the Senate Republicans and Democrats. The Senate is not in the way of this. It's the Republican-controlled House. Let's make that very clear. And it sounds like you just want to keep doing that to stop things from happening.
Thank you. Time.
It's about comprehensive. You may not like comprehensive,
time.
but piecemeal
Time.
is not the way to go.
Time. You can get a final summary for points you've missed. Next question is health care. Government and industry are facing serious problems with increasing costs to health care, national crisis. What solutions do you propose? How would you address this problem, starting with Mr. Sullivan?
Well, you know, Dave, healthcare, obviously access to healthcare for Alaskans, for Americans, affordable access to care is a critically important issue. But this is another area where Mark Begich and I fundamentally disagree. He was the 60th vote on Obamacare. I was Attorney General to sue to stop it. And what we did when we did that, I sat down with a team of attorneys at the Department of Law. We actually read the bill. We read the bill. Imagine that. Now, there were many things in that bill that had you looked at it, had you read it, had you understood it, you would have known that all the promises that were made by you and President Obama about keeping your health care plan, about reducing costs, about reducing premiums, couldn't be kept. It couldn't be kept, not with this bill. You know, I met on the campaign trail a woman from Anchorage who had a health care plan fit her needs, fit her budget, that she'd had since 1988. Guess what happened with Obamacare? Kicked her off the plan. That's happening all over the state of Alaska. What we need to do is focus back on the issue of freedom. What do I mean by freedom? Where Alaskans can determine their own health care plan, not be told by the federal government what that should be. And we can do it through market-based reforms, through more transparency, through tax deductions for families, not just businesses, through the ability to purchase plans across state lines, and to keep costs down through things like tort reform. That's what we need to do, a market-based approach to health care, not a government-run health care that commandeered 1/6 of the U.S. economy, a task for which the federal government is completely ill-suited.
Thank you. Mark, rebuttal.
When you look at where Alaska was in this country, you know, the bill was not perfect, and I hate to break the news to you, Dan. I did read that bill. It's not a perfect bill in many ways, and let me finish, Dan. 34% of Alaskans who went to get individual insurance policies prior to that bill passing were denied health care coverage in this state. Almost more than any other state in this country, 34%. And maybe you don't see those people, I do. I see the woman in Fairbanks who tells me for the first time now she has health care coverage in 10 years. Or the fisherman in Southeast and the family there, finally because he had a pre-existing condition. Or women who used to pay a higher premium just because they were women. That doesn't happen anymore. That's the old system. And it's not government run, it is private insurance companies offering the choices. And it makes a difference to families that I see every single day.
Thank you. And your 90 seconds.
Well, again, what the
No, just a second.
I'm
It's
sorry.
Mark's 90 seconds. Did I have it backwards here?
No, you're right.
Yeah, Mark's next.
You know, when you look at the healthcare system in this country, there is no question about it. When I was mayor, we used to have rates that's 11, 12% increasing every single year. 3,000 working employees. What we did, we revamped the system. The last year I was in office, less than 5% or less than 0.5% increase on premiums because we reformed it. 34% of Alaskans were being denied health care coverage trying to get individual insurance policies in this state. That's unacceptable. And the net of this bill ensured that being a woman is no longer a pre-existing condition, that children up to the age of 26 can get coverage. But when you look at the things we've done to improve it, we've repealed the 1099 provision that was burdensome to small businesses. We made sure victims of domestic violence could actually get on the marketplace and get insurance company coverage and not have to depend on their abuser. When you think about the active military members, we now cover active military members up to the age of 26 for their kids, which is in addition to the Affordable Care Act. Volunteer firefighters, we dealt with them. I have a copper plan that lowers the premiums by 18%, giving more choices, ensuring that we have more control over what we want to do in another plan. So, Dan, the issue of health care is a tough call and how to deal with it. But this is private insurance companies, but we made sure that they had quality health care that was offered to Alaskans and people across this country. And people have choices. It's not a simple thing.
Thank you, Dan. Rebuttal.
Mark, I don't know what bill you're looking at, but people do not have choices. And we have as many Alaskans who are being kicked off plans as are getting health insurance. And what you talk about small businesses, you know, one of your campaign promises in 2008 was to lower the costs of health insurance on small businesses. Almost every single small business owner I talk to in Alaska has seen their prices and costs skyrocket. So this is a problem. It's not doing what it was promised to do. And one other thing about this, in addition to where it's not working, where its implementation is shredding the rule of law. The President of the United States has changed
Thank
this
you, Dan.
law 30 times. 30 times. He doesn't have the power to do that, and yet he does it.
Dan, we've got to go on to the next question.
Sorry.
Next question is kind of a free-form question. Alaska challenges. What are the 3 most immediate challenges facing Alaska, and by what means would you resolve them? Start with Mark.
I think we have, being born and raised in the state and knowing the past, but also looking to the future. When you look at the issues, I think resource development, our military, and looking at our children into the future. When you look at resource development in the last 5.5 years, National Petroleum Reserve, for the first time ever, will have development starting next year, producing 16,000 barrels of oil into the pipeline. GMT-1 and CD5 moving forward. When you look at the $2.6 billion we moved into roads and improvements in our highways and infrastructure, and making sure that local communities have the resources they need to ensure that they have the infrastructure to grow their economy. You know, when I think about the long-term military and what's important in this state, Alaska has once again become not only the center point of the military in our country, but internationally. The F-35s are coming to Alaska after a long time. F-16s are staying where they are. Missile defense is stronger than ever before. In the last 5.5 years, that has happened. We need to continue to be the focal point because we are the center point when it comes to the Pacific Rim. When you think of our young people and the investment we need to make in education, there's no question that when you think of out in the future where we need to go, it's not just preparing kids for high school or college and 2-year and 4-year degrees, but it's also the kid who wants to be a truck driver, wants to be a welder, wants to be working in the trades. I see these kids all over the state. These are the investments we should be making to prepare our kids not only for the jobs of today, but the jobs of the future. And that's where I think some of our challenges are, focusing not just on today, but how we look long-term out and investing in the right kind of investments.
Thank you. Rebuttal, Dan.
Well, Mark, I agree with you on the issue of energy, but I disagree with you on what the federal government's done. You talk about the NPRA. That was something that a lot of people worked on. I know you had an ad that said that you did it, but there was a lot of people who worked on it. But let me tell you about the NPRA. The federal government, the Obama administration, took half of the NPRA off the table, which I think was an illegal action. By an executive order, they simply said half of the National Petroleum Reserve of Alaska, set aside by Congress for oil and gas development, we're going to take half of that off the table. That is exactly the wrong direction, and you did nothing to stop that.
Okay, and 90 seconds.
So the Alaska challenges that I see are the same ones that we've been talking about with regard to our campaign since we launched it. The first is the issue of federal overreach, which is something that Alaskans across the board are frustrated with. Whether it's we can't build a road in King Cove, whether it's the EPA looking at placer miners in the interior, drawing down with weapons on Alaskans. This is the kind of federal overreach that is undermining not only our opportunities, but our liberties. And as Attorney General and DNR Commissioner, I fought the Obama administration's overreach on a regular basis. And we need a senator who will do that. That's why I'm calling for a freeze on all regulations. You know, Senator Murkowski put forward a freeze on EPA federal regulations. Mark, you voted against that. I think that's something that would be very important for the state. Also, as I mentioned, and we agree on this, resource development, putting more oil in the pipeline. That's critical to the future. The state's made good progress on that. I'm proud to have worked with the governor on recent tax reform. But again, the federal government needs to be a partner in opportunity, not an obstacle. And in so many different areas, whether it's restricting access to land, whether it's slowing and shutting down resource development, delaying the OCS opportunities, trying to lock up ANWR, they have not been a partner in opportunity. And finally, one of the things we've been focused on is taking care of Alaskans, particularly the most vulnerable, our veterans. That's a huge, deeply felt issue for me that we've been focused on And yes, women and children. As Attorney General, I spearheaded the Choose Respect campaign. We need to bring down these horrible high
Thank you.
levels of domestic violence in Alaska.
Thank you. Mark?
Dan, prior to 2009, National Petroleum Reserve was a dream in a lot of people's eyes. CD5 was a mess. And you're right, federal agencies were fighting each other. Came in the office working with, yes, my colleague, moving forward on CD5, but GMT1 is the next. This will add 46,000 barrels to the pipeline. MPRA, prior to that, there was no development. OCS development is moving forward, 24 to 26 billion barrels of opportunity, thousands of jobs. Shell has invested $5 billion. This next year, they plan to move forward. Now, Shell had a little problem. It wasn't the federal government. They had a little problem. Now they're moving forward. These are opportunities that are happening. And does the federal regulations get in the way at times? Yes, and that's why you need to work with them. When the NPRA issue came up, and I said stay at the table to the administration, you guys walked away from the table.
Thanks,
I'm
Mark.
still in there fighting to make sure we get it done right.
Okay, next question. This is the last of our first series, 7 questions, world affairs. The world is a scary place. As a United States Senator, you're a world leader. Please tell us your vision of the international affairs and the role the United States should take on the world stage. We'll start with Dan Sullivan.
Well, first, Dave, I believe in American exceptionalism. I believe in it. The belief that we are a special country, that we have done more to liberate people throughout the world than any other country in the history of the world. And I've seen it in action. And guess what? We have an administration that doesn't believe in that. The president, our Secretary of State, and it shows. And what we have seen in terms of this administration is a weakness, and weakness is provocative. And we are not the cause of every problem in the world, but there are a lot of problems, whether it's Syria, Iran, Russia, where our weakness and lack of credibility is creating problems. We have gotten to the point now where our allies no longer trust us and our adversaries no longer fear us. And that's not good for America, it's not good for our kids, it's not good for our national security. And what we need is engaged American leadership and people who believe in this country. I have experience. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps Reserves. I'm a commanding officer of a Marine Anglico unit. At this time last year, I was in Afghanistan doing counterinsurgency work. I've worked under President Bush and Condoleezza Rice as an Assistant Secretary of State on issues relating to terrorist finance, to Iran sanctions, to Russia energy issues. I'll be ready on day one to tackle these challenges that we have throughout the world that are important to Alaskans and the rest of the country.
Thank you. Mark?
There's no question, and I think your phrase of the world is scary is true. And there are a lot of challenges we have when you think about where we are in the world politics. It doesn't matter if it's down in Israel with Hamas or, as mentioned, Iraq and Syria, Russia. But Alaska is in a unique position. As I mentioned earlier, we are now at a pivotal point in Alaska when it comes to our military power here. And we think of where we were 6 years ago, there was a great question what was going to happen. Bracking some of our bases. Missile defense wasn't going to be dealt with. F-16s were going to be moved. Where are we today? F-35s are coming. F-16s are staying. Missile defense is stronger than ever before. The military is on a growth here in Alaska because we see our role as pivotal to the Eastern, or to Europe, as well as to the Pacific Rim. It's a critical part, and it's important that Alaska be part of that international issue.
Thank you. And now 90 seconds.
Let me, if I can, give a broader, and I want to make this very clear on a couple issues. One, Israel is our ally, and whatever they need, we need to be standing with them. We have done that very recently when it came to ensuring that the Iron Dome had the resources they need to make sure they can protect their citizens from the missiles from Hamas. I have no interest at all, zero interest in putting combat troops on the ground in Iraq. We have tried to help that government. Now it's time they need to help themselves. They need to step up to the plate and be able to manage their affairs. We cannot continue to be the peacekeepers of the world. We have a role with certain allies, there's no question about it. But we have huge demands here. We have just gone through 2 wars, Afghanistan and Iraq. And the impacts they've had to our people here, we have a lot to do. Our veterans need the care and the services they earned by serving this country. And it's time that we focus internally here, taking care of our many needs in this country. And I understand our role in an international arena, but it seems like we're always the one on the front lines, and we turn around, not many people behind us at times. It is time that other countries step to the plate, and as I mentioned Iraq, they need to step to it. A year and a half ago, the administration wanted to fund the rebels in Syria. Who were the rebels? And I said, no, not interested. Yes, it's a terrible thing that's going on in Syria, but to find out later who were the rebels that we might have funded is ISIS. This doesn't make any sense. So we need those countries to step up to the plate, and we need to take care of our own for the first time back here in our country.
Thank you. Dan?
Well, Mark, I agree with you on Israel, and I've had experience working on critical security issues there, as I mentioned, Iran sanction issues, Israeli economic issues. I don't think, though, you can pull up the drawbridges around America and think we're going to have security. That's not going to happen. But one thing that we're missing, that this administration, Harry Reid, who you work with, one of his loyal foot soldiers, is we're missing this issue.
Dan.
We're missing
You
this
should
issue.
read my record a little
We're
better.
missing with this issue on energy, domestic energy. You know, the United States is now getting ready to be, once again, the world's energy superpower. The largest producer of oil in the world, the largest producer of gas, natural gas in the world. And yet we have an administration that doesn't want to seize that.
Thank you,
They can't
Dan.
even pass the Keystone Pipeline. If we're the world's energy superpower again, with Alaska leading, that will
Okay.
be tremendous for our foreign policy and national
We need to move into the next segment. Thank you. That was the first 7 questions. Now we have kind of a fun segment that we'll call it Whiteboard, and I think this was Michael's idea. So you want to explain the rules here?
Sure. Actually, I want to give Terrence Shanigan credit for it. He's the one that came up with this creative idea. I'd like to take it from him and steal it. But actually, what we're going to do is we're going to do a whiteboard where the You don't get those.
I don't get these magnets?
No.
Oh.
So we hope these are kind of fun. About half of them are Alaskana light questions, and some of them are some serious questions. And so we'll give the candidates 10 seconds to get ready and just do their best shot at answering them. We'll space these in every once in a while. First question. What is the most important point in the 10th Amendment states' rights? I'll do that last.
States' rights.
Why don't you wait and both flash them at the same time?
We're not supposed to do that now?
Sorry.
He's a lawyer. I'm not.
Come on, Dan.
Okay, sure.
Okay, show them here. And read what you've said, because we
Protection of states' rights.
Dan, can you read that?
That all power not enumerated to the federal government goes to the people and the state.
Next one, kind of a fun question. Name the largest freshwater lake totally within the United States. The hint, it's in Alaska.
It's in Alaska?
Not Big Lake. Okay, show your answers. Dan Sullivan's got the right one. Would you introduce legislation to audit the Federal Reserve, yes or no? Would you introduce legislation to audit the Federal Reserve, yes or no? Dan, show your answer.
Yes, and I have. Rand Paul and I.
Next question, do you support congressional term limits? Come on, Dan, yes or no? Okay, show us what you got.
Well, initially I said that's what I'm trying to do with Mark Begich, a term limit. But I say yes as long as it's not unilateral.
Okay, Mark?
No.
No? Next question. What is the most famous Good Friday in Alaska history? The most famous Good Friday in Alaska.
Notes, Dan. No notes. I'm not using notes on these.
Okay, show your answer.
The earthquake.
Okay.
I was here.
Got it. Next one, where is the oldest established continuous community in Alaska? I didn't know this one either. Give it your best guess. The oldest established continuous community in Alaska. Just make a guess.
Oh, I gotta go fast? I don't think this is, I know this is not right, but
Okay, show your answers.
I'm gonna say Sitka.
Okay, you both missed it, and I didn't know it either. It's Point Hope. 6,000 years?
6,000 years?
Yeah, native.
The next question, what is an old-timer in Alaska referred to as? Okay, show your answers. Good job. In terms of landmass area, how much bigger is Alaska than Texas?
Hang on, buddy. I like to put it a different way. Split Alaska in half, we're still number 1 and 2. And Texas is third.
Well said, both of you got it. Where is the Salty Dog Saloon Lighthouse? No, Mark.
Homer and the bar.
And the last of this first series, how did you vote on SB 21? How did you vote on SB 21? Okay. Okay, we're at 8 o'clock. Let's go ahead and have our first question of each candidate, and then we'll just take a 2-minute stretch break. So the first one from Dan Sullivan to Senator Begich, your question, and candidate will have 30 seconds to ask the question. Challenged candidate will have 60 seconds to respond, and then 30-second rebuttal. So, Mark, first question from Dan, so Dan goes first.
So, Mark, you and President Obama promised Alaskans that Obamacare would lower costs and let people keep their plans if they like them. At the Department of Law, when I was Attorney General, when we actually analyzed the bill, it was clear that Obamacare couldn't meet those promises. Instead, thousands of Alaskans have gotten kicked off their plans, and thousands could see their premiums skyrocket. If you had to do it over again, would you once again cast a deciding vote for Obamacare?
Dan, let me also remind again that the statistics here, and then simply answer the question that we're not going back to the days when 34% of Alaskans who wanted individual plans or could try to get individual insurance were canceled or were unable to get it. We're not going back to the days where women were considered pre-existing conditions. We're not going back to the days when women had to pay higher premiums. We're not going back to the days where kids couldn't get coverage with their parents up to the age of 26, or people who had existing conditions were denied health care coverage. It is not a perfect plan, but we need to continue to move forward and improve on it. Because if we go back to the days in the back when there was no Affordable Care Act, Alaskan after Alaskan was denied health care coverage by insurance companies. Now they actually have to cover them. On top of that, we have many families that I run into that have received premiums back because the insurance companies charge them more than they should have, because the law prevents them from charging more than what is 85% of the premium. This is, in my view, a step. Is it perfect? No, Dan. But every time I hear about your repeal idea and getting rid of it, 15,000 Alaskans now are on the marketplace. You're going to kick them all off. What do? What do our friends and neighbors who are Alaskans? And on top of that, it'd be nice if the governor, your friend, part of the administration you would belong to, would cover the Medicaid program, put 30,000 Alaskans on a policy. 30,000 Alaskans.
Thank you. Time. Dan, rebuttal.
So I take it that was a yes, that you would
Yeah.
vote again? Because you never answered my question.
No, I did.
No, you didn't.
I said we're not going back, so the law is law. You noted
Yes or
where I
no,
voted.
if you had to do it over again, would you once again cast a deciding vote on
I voted
Obamacare?
for it,
Yes
Dan.
or
Is
no?
that-
Mark,
question?
you'll have, no double asks here. Mark, you can summarize at the end,
Okay.
clarify, but
Okay.
you've got 30-second rebuttal, is that it?
That was my rebuttal. Just
Okay.
I'd like an answer to the question.
Okay, we're not going to have the give and take here. We've got then the question of Mark's question.
Dan, the Patriot Act is a piece of legislation that I have voted 3 times and not moving it forward. I think the Patriot Act has done damage. It has, I think, opened up in a way that government, you talk about government overreach, the Patriot Act has gone far beyond. 3 times I voted against that piece of legislation. Would you vote against reauthorization of the Patriot Act if you were in the U.S. Senate?
So I'm focused on making sure that we're safe at home and safe abroad. And one of the things that I do think the Patriot Act did is it gave our focus on domestic surveillance in the NSA authorities that were focused on the wrong people. We started focusing on the good guys, meaning us, and not the bad guys, meaning the terrorists overseas. So from my perspective, the Patriot Act was passed after 9/11 by a very, very broad-based coalition of Democrats and Republicans because they were worried about the security of the United States, the domestic security of the United States. Do I think that that needs to be improved? Do I think that the NSA needs to be reined in? Absolutely. And right now, to me, one of the critical issues that's going on with regard to that kind of oversight is that we have now different courts that are looking at what the NSA has done with regard to the Fourth Amendment. And I think that's critical, because whatever we do with regard to the Patriot Act, with regard to domestic security, it has to be consistent with the Constitution. So I would be looking at ways for oversight with regard to the NSA, and looking at ways to make sure that the Patriot Act is not infringing on Americans' rights.
Thank you.
So again, I ask a simple question. You know, the choice is the reauthorization of the Patriot Act. I know we're not going to go back and forth, but I want to make sure it's clear. I voted 3 times against it. You didn't answer that question on reauthorization. NSA has gone too far. There's no question about it. That's why we have legislation pending that Senator Wyden has put forward. I don't know if you support that either. That would ensure that we'd have more transparency with the NSA, ensure that the public here, the individuals that are in this audience, who knows who's being spied on by the NSA today. But I'll tell you something, the Patriot Act went too far. That's why our state legislature has taken a position on this, to oppose the Patriot Act because of its infringement on individual rights.
Thank you. Why don't we all take just 2 minutes and stand up and stretch, and you can have a little sip of water there, and then we'll pick up again in 2 minutes.
So the next section is the big question or questions from us back and forth? You're figuring that out?
We're running, I think we had more questions, but that's going to run too long. So why don't we just do one more question right there, and then move on to the questions. Okay. We can throttle back to the whiteboard. Okay, well, first off, let's just do one more question and then each ask each other, and that'll save us some time. And then we'll do a whiteboard, and then it's a big question.
Big question.
Yeah.
And then the closing?
Yeah, we don't have time for questions.
Okay.
So one more question.
One more question you ask
One
each
more
other.
whiteboard?
Yes.
And then the big question on the closing, and then
And you're only closing.
Okay.
We just don't have time for 4 questions that you ask each other. It's a big question. Okay, could we have everybody seated again? We're trying to run, we've got a lot of material to cover here. Okay, Mark, you're going to get the next, ask the next one. Okay, we're going to convene again. We'll lead off with Senator Begich asking a question. Could we have everybody's attention? Go ahead, Mark.
Go ahead. I'm just waiting for, you tell me when.
Okay,
Yeah,
shoot.
we're good. Okay.
Clock started.
Dan, Alaska is a state so unique, and truly, we have our own Alaska values here. Dan, you talk about your Washington experience, your ability to work in the State Department, but some of your work worked against Alaska values, like doing the industry bidding to develop GMOs, genetically modified foods and others, which would not only undermine the safety, for example, in Alaska with our fish by promoting genetically modified products like frankenfish, which had a direct impact to Alaska jobs, Alaska fisheries. Why would you be doing that and think that's an Alaska value? That was one of your jobs.
So Mark, as I mentioned, I had a broad portfolio at the State Department working for Secretary Rice. And one of the things that I was focused on is trying to ensure that American exports abroad had open markets. And as you know, we have a very, our farmers and our ranchers export all over the world. And we had members of other countries, particularly in the European Union, that opposed American exports of agriculture, the French and others. And I worked hard to make sure that we had open markets with regard to our agriculture products, which was defending American interests. So that was in the agriculture sector. Had nothing to do with salmon, had nothing to do with, as you call it, frankenfish. I'm opposed to genetically modified fish. So I was working hard to promote America's interests, whether it was taking on terrorist finance issues in terrorist organizations or promoting open markets for American manufacturers, agriculture interests, farmers, so we could create more jobs in America.
Thank you, Dan.
Let's make sure we're clear on when you say agricultural interests, that's Monsanto, who has genetically modified products. And let's be very frank on this. When you start talking about genetically modified products, may they be farm products or any other product, they have a direct impact. I have fought for the last 3.5 years to make sure frankenfish does not enter the seafood market. As chair of the Fisheries and Coast Guard Committee, this would be damaging to our fisheries industry, not only here, but across this country. And people want to know what they're buying. They want to know what chemicals they're putting into these products. And instead, it sounded like you just wanted to offload them to other countries and not tell them that these are genetically modified products. And frankenfish is one of those products.
Thank you. And Dan, your question?
Mark, this is a simple question. How many of the bills that you have authored in the last 5.5 years have become law. Not co-sponsored, authored.
Well, Dan, there's two bills, but let me be very clear on this so you understand the process of the Senate. One of the things I have done, and give you an example, I worked with a senator from Texas, Republican senator, on a bill to ensure that individuals who are overseas in the military would have the ability to have more time to vote. We fought for that bill, but instead we put it in as an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Bill. Was able to pass it. In the appropriation bill, instead of trying to fight for our bill, what we did is we put it into an appropriation bill regarding labeling of frankenfish. When it came to taking care of our Alaska Territorial Guard, who the Defense Department, the Pentagon, cut their retirements, just right out from under them, 80-year-old people that were supporting our country. Yes, I had a bill on that, but guess what? Instead, I got it into the National Defense Authorization Bill because that bill was passing. I merged the bill. That's how you do it in the Senate. You want to get bills passed. Yes, some just want to get their names out there to get their campaign brochures so they did this and that. What I like to do is get my job done. So I make sure I amend bills with issues that matter to Alaska. You know, when you think about, I can go through a list of items that I've done. For example, the most recently, $500 million is now coming to Alaska Native villages and their clinics because of action I took. I had a bill pending, but I got the administration to respond. That's how you get the business done. Just passing bills, it sounds like you want more government overreach, more bills, more legislation. I'm about getting the job done, Dan. That's how it works. That's how the Senate works. That's how you get the business for Alaska done. That's what I've done. I'll be happy to give you a whole shopping list of things I've done in every bill that's passed. I guarantee you, every bill that's passed, there's an Alaska piece in there, and you can rest assured that I was part of that effort.
Dan?
So I think you didn't answer my question, so I'll answer it for you.
Two bills.
How many bills that you've authored have become
I'll
law?
say it again.
One. And that was to name a federal building. Now, Ted Stevens, his first term, 13 bills that he authored. One was transferring federal lands back to Alaska. Lisa Murkowski, her first term, 5 bills, including legislation to rein in the EPA. Now, Mark, you're part of Harry Reid's leadership team. You don't advertise that in your ads, but you're part of Harry Reid's leadership team. You have not been allowed by Harry Reid to offer one amendment on the Senate floor in 5.5 years on the Senate. And I think that's an indication of your effectiveness for Alaska, and it's not very effective.
Thank you.
You know,
We're going to have another round of our whiteboard questions here, lighten the mood a little bit. For both of you, I know that you're unhappy with not being able to completely answer your questions, so you're going to have your final 90 seconds at the end, so take notes for points that you want to make there. Okay, first question. How many Alaska Native regional corporations are there? And there are perhaps 2 answers. Show your answer. Okay, good answer. 12 would also work, but...
no, you got to include the one in Washington.
Well, if the president grants some type of amnesty by executive order, would you support it? Okay, show your answer. No.
No,
And no.
Congress needs to be part of it.
Number 3, do you support a convention of states to consider amendments to the Constitution? Don't just show it, Dan. Dan, not yet, not yet. Read your answer, Mark.
If we can get rid of Citizens United, I'm open.
Here's a fun Alaska question, and you've got 30 seconds instead of 10 to answer this one. List the 5 current candidates for governor in Alaska. Do you know who they are? By the way, we have one present here, if she would stand up. Yes, I know Carolyn's here. Over there. And is there another candidate?
Well, you're giving away the
Oh, sorry. So we just have one present here.
I just know. He has cheat notes.
Okay, turn them over.
No, 3 of them.
Got 3. They each got 3.
Yeah. There's an AIP and a Libertarian, but I don't know the names.
Well, our Libertarian's
They're
up there.
here.
In
Constitution Party.
Okay, next question. Would you support and legislate for a consumption or flat tax?
Flat.
Or consumption tax.
And the flat thing. This is.
Need a bigger whiteboard, Dan? Show your answer. Read your answer.
I said no, but there are many elements of the flat tax proposal that I would support, particularly the simplification of our tax code.
Mark?
Good, it sounds like he supports what I already am sponsoring. So no on the consumption, I support the tax semi-flat, which is the one I mentioned earlier, which has 3 rates.
Next question. What is the only public boarding school in America, and where is it located? What is the only public boarding school in America, and where is it located? And hint, obviously, Alaska.
And what now?
What is the only public boarding school in America, and where is it located? You need more than just Alaska.
Can't be looking at.
Ready?
Yeah, Sitka, but I put a lot.
Okay, both got the right school. Dan got the right city. Next we have, what is Alaska's state bird, and spell it right.
Come on. See that? No, I'm not.
I'm cheating.
The rules were they were allowed to bring notes, so that's not cheating.
Don't be
Okay, turn it.
Yeah, you
I didn't look.
Okay, read your answer.
Ptarmigan.
Okay, very good. Who invented the design of the Alaska flag?
I can't believe Oh my God, I can't believe I just had the.
Okay, ready? Very good. And last question, under what instances would you support nullification or federal law? Is there something that, in what instances, is there something that just grabs you that, of a federal law that should be nullified, that,
A law, or what's the reason for law?
a law, is there a law out there that you think that, that should be nullified by states? Is there, you're familiar with Bob Byrd's really pushed the nullification issue.
Yeah, so you're asking which law that a state,
Which law do you believe that we should stand up to the federal government and say that's unconstitutional?
oh, I got you, okay.
This is an important one. Take a little bit of time there.
Yeah, I'm ready. Might I may have to explain, because there's several laws that relate to that.
Dan, are you ready? Okay, show them, and Dan, read yours.
Consumer Protection Financial Bureau. I think it's unconstitutional.
Okay, Mark?
Mine, because I think there's several laws here, but the right for states to develop its resources on lands in the states, may they be owned by federal government or otherwise.
Okay, now we're getting to what we call the big question. I'm going to ask the two candidates to incorporate some of the following thoughts into their vision of what America should look like and how they would achieve that. So some of the statements, interesting, all politics is local. Tip O'Neill, former Speaker of the House, talked about that as perhaps being one of the reasons that we vote locally for people who are to be representing us at the national level. 85% of Americans hold Congress in low regard, yet 90% incumbents are reelected. Majority of Americans feel America is on a downward path. What do you think? Do you agree, disagree? More and more federal government's concentrating power in Washington, D.C., spending, decision-making, all moving away from the states. So if you could kind of incorporate some of those thoughts, and by the way, they've been giving these questions ahead of time, so it's not like we're catching them off guard here. So they've had time to think about what's their vision for America, incorporating some of these concepts, and how would they achieve that. So first we have, who do we have? I don't have that. Who went first last time? Do you remember?
No, we didn't.
Mark, why
I'll
don't you
go
start?
first. I'm happy to find.
Okay.
When I read that question you gave us, it was a lot of issues in there. And it's a great question. And we should all strive for some answer that kind of capsulizes it all. It's going to be tough in 90 seconds. But when I think of that question, I think about my son, who's 12 years old now, who thinks he's 21, but he's 12, and what his future will look like, not only here in Alaska, but in this country. That's what all of us strive for in public office, as leaders, individuals, trying to figure out what we see as the future. But it takes some work to get there. It's not an easy road. When I see conflict, and there's times, and there's no question about it, I jump right in there. We got to figure these problems out together. When it comes to fighting the administration on the National Petroleum Reserve, you bet you I'll be on the front lines, making sure, not walking away from it, not saying, well, I disagree, I'm walking off the table. That's not what Alaskans are about. That is not what we do as Alaskans. We work together. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Green, Independent, it doesn't matter. We find the common ground that brings us together. That's what this election's about. That's the big challenge we have. The big challenge is how, as Alaskans, as Americans, we're going to solve these problems that face us today. And there's no easy issue. There's no easy path. Those are all done. So it does mean at times we're going to have conflict. I mean, I saw in one of the blogs, they joked about how I was convinced to come here. I wasn't convinced. You probably would have wanted my brother Nick better than me here, I can guarantee you that. But I wanted to come because as Alaskans, we sit together at the same table. We may disagree. We may debate the issues up and down, but we're going to solve these. We're going to figure out how to grow the economy by making sure the OCS is open, MPRA is being developed, making sure we have a strong military, and yes, making sure our veterans are taken care of, just like I did in making sure our veterans have health care coverage no matter where they live in Alaska. They do not have to fly to Seattle or Anchorage to get their care. They can get it anywhere now. We're the model for the country in how to make sure we deliver health care for our veterans because we sat down and figured this out. When it came to figuring out the mines that we needed to open up and establish down in Southeast where the roadless rule prohibited us from moving forward, but not anymore. Niblack, Bocan, Kensington, Greens Creek, moving forward, Donlin, all those are moving forward. Kinko is a tough one. We still got work to do. We're not done. People who throw up their hands and walk away, in my view, are not Alaskans. We step up to the plate every day. That's the challenge we have as a country and as people. And not to be demonizing people, creating fear in people, or always blaming someone else for the problem. That's like my 12-year-old son sometimes. 12 times I tell him, clean up your room. He blames it on some mystery person that makes a mess in his house, in his room. But we have to work together as Alaskans, figuring this out. That's what leadership is about. Not driving wedges, dividing our state, and complaining and creating fear. It's about seizing those opportunities and moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
That's what we're doing. That's what I'll continue to do.
Thank-
That's the challenge we have.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, Dan, 60 seconds for rebuttal.
A rebuttal on this?
You rebut, yeah, do you disagree? Let's see, we have, no, I'm sorry, we have,
I
we
think
have,
I'm just going to,
yeah, you have rebuttal, and you can ask questions, and then, yeah, okay, so you,
I think, you want me to just give my,
okay, okay, that's fair. That's, we're running out of time, so why don't you just give your vision?
well, look, as I mentioned at the outset of my remarks, I do think, and I think it's not just me, it's the vast majority of Alaskans, think that our country is fundamentally heading in the wrong direction. And I mentioned the huge debt levels and the economic issues where we can't get our economy moving, and the federal overreach issues where we are not making progress with this administration, with Harry Reid, who said that he will never compromise on ANWR, never. That kind of federal overreach, the road, the King Code Road, the federal agencies that are running amok. Everybody in Alaska has a story about federal overreach and how it's harming our interests, the rule of law. We talked about that. Veterans. Senator, I will disagree with you very much with regard to how we've treated our veterans. This administration has done a horrible, horrible job of taking care of our veterans. The Second Amendment, forestry, mining. We are going in the wrong direction. 75% of Americans now believe that they're not going to leave a better America for their kids than the one they've had. It's the highest number ever. The American dream is becoming the American mirage, and we need to change it, but we're running out of time. We've been running a campaign that is positive, that's based on unleashing our economic and energy potential for all of us, for doing that through policies of less government, more freedom, freezing regulations, of fighting the federal government's overreach. And we need to do that. We need a senator in Washington who's going to take on this administration, not vote with President Obama 97% of the time. That's what we need. And taking care of our most vulnerable, women and children. We have way too high rates of domestic violence here, and our veterans. So to me, that's what we've been focused on. Where do we need to be in 10 years? I think it's a vision that we could all agree on. We need to have a strong economy again. We need to have seize this energy renaissance, which is such a great opportunity.
Thank you, Dan.
Was that
Sorry.
90 seconds?
Yep, we got the
Oh, I'm
double
sorry. Well-
click there. We're going to go into the last part of this. We're trying very hard to keep this to 90 minutes, and you've been very patient with us. And I do want to thank both the candidates and the audience for helping me moderate through this. So thank you for your help. We're going to close with each candidate getting a chance to kind of give a closure there. I know that they both missed some opportunities to really answer some of the questions. This is their chance to make their final pitch to you as to why their vision for where this country should go is what we need to have. So let's see, Mark, you led off in the last one, so Dan, can you do a closing here?
Well, thanks, Dave. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mark, for the debate tonight. You know, one of the privileges of campaigning throughout the state is you get to hear your fellow Alaskans' hopes and concerns. And one of the things that I've seen on the campaign trail, which is a disturbing trend, I think, for all of us, is that some of our fellow citizens are starting to lose hope. Not only hope in the direction of this country, but starting to fear their own government. Ladies and gentlemen, hopelessness is not an American or an Alaskan virtue. Fear of your government is not an American value. I honestly believe that we can turn the situation around in our country, but we are running out of time. And this is a critical election for Alaska and America. It could decide who controls the U.S. Senate. Now, there's a very clear contrast between me and Mark on our records, on our philosophy of government, and our vision for the future. We need a senator who will truly put Alaska first and truly put America first. Who will repeal and replace Obamacare? Mark Begich won't, I will. Who will stand up to the EPA and prevent it from shutting down our state. Mark Begich won't, I will. Who will put together a real plan on ANWR? Mark Begich won't, I will. Who will protect our veterans and stand up for our heroes? Mark Begich won't, I will. And who will retire? Who will retire Harry Reid as Senate Majority Leader? Mark Begich certainly won't, I will. Together we can take our country back and make sure that our kids do have a future that's better than the one we've inherited. I'd be honored by your vote in November. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much to UFL, and Dave, you did a great job for moderating. You should give him a round of applause. Thank you, Dan, for participating in this debate. You know, as I said in my last statement, Alaska is a very unique place. You know, I sit in this room today. I remember as a kid growing up in this part of town. I live in East Anchorage still today. Northern Lights was a 2-lane road, strip paving. It was so exciting for me as a kid to bicycle up to Sears Mall, because that was it. That was the place, unless you went downtown to J.C. Penney's. There was nothing here. Your medical care, you had to fly out of state to get it. Education, barely could get it here because we had a small university. But people believed in what's possible. There is a clear difference between me and my opponent. I want to talk about what's possible, what we learned from as Alaskans over the last several decades, and what we can do. Not creating fear, not creating divides that want to divide because one's a Democrat and one's a Republican. That's not Alaska. That's not the Alaska I was born and raised in. It's not the Alaska my son is in. It's not the Alaska my nephews and nieces are in. This is about an opportunity to move our state forward. And there are differences. You heard a little bit tonight. You know, when you talk about tax reform, Dan wants to put a 30% tax. I don't. I believe in economic opportunity. When you think of Social Security and Medicare, he wants to dismantle it. I don't. I think it's an important investment that we make for our seniors, because how you judge your community is how you treat your young people and your seniors, making sure they live in dignity in their later years. When you think of freedom, and I hear the phrase thrown around all the time, it's a great buzzword, but it's almost like there's freedom for almost everybody under Dan's plan, except women. You're not going to have freedom to make your decision on your own health care and what you do with your own body. You know, when you think, and I appreciate,
let's have everybody's quiet. No, sit down.
And
Hey. Listen, you're not part of this debate. Sit down.
This is,
Okay, Mark,
this is what's good about Alaska. It doesn't matter what your view is, you get to say it. And that is okay. You know, there's one thing people know about me. I am not afraid to stand up and listen to people's views, no matter who they are, where they come from. You know, you hear me on talk radio, I'm not afraid of that. But there are differences in this election. I've just mentioned a few. When you think about it, and I appreciate him saying he's running a positive campaign, I don't know about those third-party groups beating the hell out of me every day. The Koch brothers, the Koch brothers who are closing down a refinery in Alaska, laying off 80 hard-working Alaskans, leaving dirty water. I didn't hear a peep out of my opponent on this issue. Sexual assault, when it came to sexual assault in the military, a bill that we moved forward, I wanted to make sure it was out of the chain of command, because we need to make sure people have the right to make sure they prosecute those perpetrators. I didn't hear a word from my opponent on that. There are clear differences. We may not always agree, but at the end of the day, I'm going to sit down with people, listen to folks, try to find that common thread that bind us, that make us Alaskans, and move this state forward and move this country forward. I believe in what's possible. I'm not interested in fear and negativism. It's about positive opportunities.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody. I hope you all learned a lot and feel like it was worth your time. And Michael's got a few closing words here, and thank you.
Yes, we are going to have an exit poll. It's outside, and we're going to publish the exit poll, so please make your voice known there with the exit poll. Also, if you look on the back, you'll see that there's a lot of patriots that have given money. I'm certainly not asking you for $100 or $50, but there's a little donation box out there, and if you could put a few pennies in there, because it certainly costs an awful lot of money for us to do that. So, you know, if you could show your gratitude for this debate by doing that, and please give both of these candidates a wonderful round of applause.
Thank you, guys.